Thursday afternoon, 4 o'clock time for Sports for CLE. Thanks for joining us. I hope you're having a good afternoon. Browns getting ready to face a challenge. They will face the Baltimore Ravens Sunday at home. Ken Dorsey named the play caller for the offense yesterday, and it was official. Jameis Winston, the quarterback, the day before. Dorsey talked about taking on the play calling duties.
I think at the end of the day, we're really going to still just look at, all right, how are we going to best attack a defense based off of our personnel and try to utilize our personnel in the best way. And that's just the focus on a week-to-week basis. And so I think that's the way I approach it. I think that's the way Kev approaches it. And I think that's the best way. Is there's not a magic, a magic coach or a magic pill, to play better on offense. It's going to be work, it's going to be attention to detail. It's going to be us at the end of the day locking in and fighting and going out and playing with, extreme physicality, playing with speed, playing with confidence, So in terms of that perspective, I think I'm taking that same approach as a coach as every player should be. We want to freaking go out and play fast, physical, accountable football to each other. And I think that's the approach I'm going to take. And I think that's the approach that every single player should take that steps out on the field.
Well, now let's welcome in Quincy Carrier, Untitled Unfiltered Browns coverage. Quincy, when I watched the Browns this year, that is an ingredient that has been missing. They are no longer physical, especially on the offensive line. That was kind of a trademark. I don't know if it's injury. I don't know if it's scheme. It's probably a bunch of things, but they're not as physical as they used to be.
I would peg it at injury and age, right? Would probably make the most sense there to blame for that. The Browns have had a ton of injuries throughout the offensive line. I don't think they've had their full starting five out there yet this season. So obviously injuries have played a part, and where injuries haven't played a part, age has. I mean, Joe Bitonio was drafted in 2014. Just think about some of the guys in the draft class and where their career's sitting at now. It's not a surprise that Joe Bitonio's starting to taper off as far as his effectiveness goes. Then you look at other guys. Wyatt Teller's been in and out the lineup. He's probably one of the most physical offensive linemen you have. Jack Conklin's back out there, but he's also working back from an ACL injury that took him out for over a calendar year. Jed Wills was almost out for almost a calendar year as well. So like these injuries, they have effects even once these guys get back on the field. And to the guys who aren't injured, most of those guys are old, right? Like I think it's just a combination of injury and age that has hit your offensive line.
All right, so Deshaun Watson injured with the Achilles, 9 to 12 months, so not sure when he will be back. The question is the Deshaun Watson era over in Cleveland, in your opinion, and where do they go from there?
Yeah, when we're talking about an era, we're talking about a time where you're planning around somebody to be a franchise quarterback. That's done for with Deshaun Watson, right? His combination of his play plus the injuries that he's had in back-to-back seasons. This is somebody who's going to be turning 30, who plays a play style that you worry about being able to age well at the quarterback position, right? We talked about this. He has that same kind of play style as Carson Wentz and Cam Newton, and you saw how fast those guys' careers kind of tapered off once they hit 30, and then you add the bonus accelerator to that he tore his Achilles and then had a throwing shoulder surgery that took him out for the entire season last year as well. So it's just not a good combination there. I don't think any front office is looking at Deshaun Watson right now saying that's got to be our guy, that's going to be our franchise. So now it's about figuring out what you like in this year's draft class, getting a quarterback if you think one is there, and not like if you think a guy can be Kirk Cousins in the first round, but like a true franchise quarterback. If you think there's a real chance to get a franchise quarterback in this year's draft, and positioning yourself or putting yourself in a position to when you do get a franchise quarterback, whether it be in 2025 or 2026, that you can develop that player properly without ruining them. That means getting better at the offensive line and everything else. So yeah, it's time for the Browns to start turning the page and figure out what they're going to do after Watson. I think that time had come before the injury. This injury kind of just solidifies it, that it's time for the Cleveland Browns to think about the post-Watson era.
All right, as you might imagine, a lot of voicemails. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hey, what's up, Dave? I just saw a headline that Kevin Stefanski has decided to allow Ken Dorsey to call the plays. We have to commend him for trying something new. The season is already at a loss, and we need to see, or they need to see, if Ken Dorsey is better at calling the offense that he helped implement. What do you think, Dave? Thanks for taking my call. Take care.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Quincy, the timing of it, I think, is kind of strange. But you had to change something. They were forced to change the quarterback. Now you're changing the play caller. I think there's, and I'm kind of with you. We were talking before the show. I think there's too many cooks in the kitchen, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, the play call has been an issue all year, right? Remember the fourth down play call that couldn't get in with Deshaun Watson. The Browns have led the league in these procedural penalties. It makes sense that they made a switch here at play caller, because a lot of like the play calling stuff, as much as we focus on it as like it's the heart of the offense, it's really not. What the play calling really is just a procedural element in the offense, and it's a procedural element that's been hurting this team because the play calls just haven't been getting in quick enough. Maybe there's arguing about what play call you should do, or too much input on the headset about the play call. It could be a number of reasons why that process needed to change. But when you had those procedural penalties flare up again in the way that it did last week, you definitely got to make a change there. And this is the change to make here. This is the big fix to all of that. So we'll see if that makes the change for these procedural penalties that the Browns are having right now. Also, it's something to consider. Kevin Stefanski, while he does have a playbook itself that matches what Jameis Winston does well, right? The play action stuff, the stuff we talk about going well with Jacoby Brissett and Joe Flacco. The philosophy in play calls is not something that really matches up with Jameis. Jameis likes to throw the ball deep, and that's what Ken Dorsey also loves to do. He likes to go downfield. And think about it like this, Dave. They're still running a playbook that's largely influenced by Kevin Stefanski and the stuff that we saw Joe Flacco and Jacoby Brissett do. But since it's Jameis in there, who's somebody who likes to go downfield more, they're going to try to take advantage of somebody else who has more expertise in attacking downfield as the play caller in Ken Dorsey.
All right, so Ken Dorsey was just asked the difference between Winston and Deshaun Watson today.
Honestly, I think Jameis, they're different personalities. They're, different types of players. So Jameis obviously has got a lot of great experience in this league and done a lot of good things. And I remember a lot, going back to Carolina when we had Cam and Derek Anderson, and DA had to come in and play some games and played at a high level for us, but two very different players. So, it's about being able to adjust as an offense to guys' strengths and what they can do best and put them in position where they feel comfortable and they can go out and execute at a high level. And the guys around them know exactly what to do and how to do it. So you're not reinventing the wheel for your offense, but you're making sure that he's comfortable and the guys around him are comfortable, can execute at a high level.
So Quincy, what do you expect to see from Watson? What can we expect from Deshaun Watson?
Winston's going to throw this ball downfield a lot. I mean, he likes to go high-low. The fun stat that I have from last week's game, the Browns had 3 quarterbacks play. One played a half, Deshaun Watson. The other one played the second half, DTR. And then another quarterback played one drive in that game. And Jameis Winston was that one quarterback. And he led the team in intermediate pass attempts, intermediate pass completions, and he had the lowest time to throw. Jameis is going to attack that 10 to 19 yard part of the field. He's going to attack the middle of the field, and he's going to do it with confidence and early in his drop. He's somebody who's going to be good for helping your tackles not lose their depth because he doesn't roll out the pocket as well. I expect him to take some chances, to get some 50-50 balls. Jameis is going to give you an opportunity to make a play, and that means that's equal opportunity for both the offense and the defense. So you might see more turnovers, but you're definitely going to see the ball going downfield much, much more often. Again, Jameis had 7 intermediate pass attempts. I think Deshaun Watson had 2 in one half of football last week. So you're talking about tripling the amount of intermediate pass attempts that Deshaun was taking.
All right, Nick Chubb returned and got the touchdown. I think it was an average of 2 yards a carry. Not his fault. A lot of defenders in the backfield. How long do you think it takes for Chubb to get back to his form?
I don't think it's going to take very long. When I watched him on film, I mean, there were some opportunities for him to break a big one. He just needs to be comfortable. And I think the thing that's going to take him the longest to be comfortable with isn't what most people assume, right? Like the contact, the pile stuff. That stuff he's going to get comfortable with relatively quickly. The one area where I'm like, yeah, he's going to take a little time for him to get comfortable is getting in the open field and being comfortable that his knee's not going to get attacked in that open field, because that's where he got the injury. So, I think it's going to be step by step here. Nick Chubb's going to look a lot better doing some of the incremental run stuff. And then he's going to get comfortable running in the open field like we saw him. He's going to be that same powerful guy sooner than later.
Quincy Carrier, Untitled Unfiltered Browns coverage. And I'm going to step aside, take a quick time out. Back to the voicemail of truth and reason when we return. Sports for CLE will be right back.
You know what I think? I don't think you have the stones.
Oh, I've got the stones. I think you're the one that don't have the stones.
Let's settle this once and for all.
Amble up to the 4 new Ohio Lottery scratch-offs with all kinds of stones. Gemstones, diamond, emerald, sapphire, and ruby 10s. $10 each. 10 times multipliers. 2 fast spots for quick draw wins of up to $100 and a $500,000 grand prize. Which one will you get when you order them up? Well, that's just the luck of the draw.
We continue talking Browns with Quincy Carrier from Untitled Unfiltered Browns coverage. Let's head back to the voicemail of truth and reason.
Hi, this is Rico. Another puzzling decision by Stefanski. He finally gives up play calling after all these years. After all this season, he gives up the reins to Ken Dorsey. But this is after Watson goes down for the season. Because in my opinion, Winston is better suited for Stefanski's play-action attack. Now, to be fair, Winston can sling it in any style offense, but I'm just confused as to why he made this major decision after Watson is hurt for the season. It makes no sense. I don't know, Dave. It's just another truly bizarre decision by this organization. Stefanski looked dejected, like it wasn't his choice to do this.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Yeah, Quincy, he did not look like he was having a lot of fun, but 1-7, the record will do that to you. 1-6, 1-7. I lose track. The record will give you that look as well.
Yeah, I mean, changing the play caller after your starting quarterback gets hurt for the season, I don't know why people think that's this super odd decision. Maybe like I'm missing something there, but it would make sense that if your quarterback got hurt for the rest of the year and you got to start a completely different quarterback, that would definitely be the time to make a big change, because you don't want to make a change at quarterback and then go back and be like, oh, now we're going to change the play caller for the offense 3 weeks later. Like, I feel like that would be a bit more bizarre. So honestly, it makes a lot more sense to me. The Browns are having procedural issues on the offensive end. So they needed to do something about the play calling process and simplify it. The obvious way to simplify it is let Ken Dorsey handle it, who's handled it in the NFL in the past. And also, Ken Dorsey likes to throw the ball deep. He likes these high-low, deep ball concepts. That's the same thing Jameis Winston likes. It makes sense for that quarterback.
All right. I know you've addressed this on your show as well. Who's to blame for where the Browns are at this point in the season? I don't think anybody had one win as you head into the Ravens game as a prediction.
And look, everything up before the Commanders game, I kind of understand how you got there, because nobody expected Deshaun Watson to be this bad to start the year. But once you got to that Commanders game and you continued to play Deshaun Watson, that's where I start to throw blame around. And the blame that I throw around is to Kevin Stefanski, is to Andrew Berry, is to Jimmy Haslam, because I have to imagine that those were the principal people that were making the decisions that kept Deshaun Watson as the starting quarterback during that time. And look, I know there were other problems on the Cleveland Browns at that time, right? The offensive line wasn't doing great. The defense was playing up and down football. We weren't playing complementary football as a unit. But the fact was, with Deshaun Watson at quarterback, that offense just wasn't going to be able to win games no matter how well the offensive line was playing and no matter how well the defense was playing. That team was still going to struggle a lot because there's some basic things that you weren't executing at the quarterback position. And letting that continue for 2 extra weeks, I felt like was not something that I could just look past and think, oh, well, you're in a tough spot here. It's a tough situation. It's a tough spot to be in. I think everybody expected they would get more out of certain positions than they were getting. I think everybody thought we would get more out the defense than we got this year so far, even though they played well the last 2 weeks. I think everybody thought we'd get more out the quarterback position than we have so far. There's just a lot of people underperforming at a lot of different positions, to be fair to everybody.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm kind of with you, though. If you changed... Clearly, it wasn't getting any better, but the Commanders did that. You could have changed going into the Eagles game, and if you were able to win 2 games, you're at 3-4 instead of 1-6, and that's a whole different animal. So who do you think's on the hot seat?
I think, ironically, we talked a lot about it, but Ken Dorsey seems like, if I just look at this logically, I don't think Jimmy Haslam's going to be as gung-ho to fire 2-time coach of the year as some people think he's going to be. This is somebody who is very conscious of his image in Jimmy Haslam. And the headline, Jimmy Haslam fires a 2-time coach of the year, is not one that he wants to put out there. He's going to be real hesitant to move off of Kevin, and you're probably not going to be able to keep Kevin and then fire Andrew Berry. So you're probably going to have to keep Andrew Berry as well, which leaves Ken Dorsey as the lone guy who really you could look at and say, hey, you're kind of brought in for Watson. Now we're kind of see what your value you have as a play caller. If Watson's not the quarterback, I feel like he's being evaluated a little bit here down the stretch, because if you just read the tea leaves and look at where the Browns are and what's structured, it's not likely to me that Ken Dorsey gets promoted to head coach and Kevin Stefanski loses his job. What does seem likely to me is that the Browns make a decision at the end of the year, or the Browns and Ken Dorsey come to an agreement at the end of the year to part ways.
Yeah, and then they go back to the Kevin Stefanski offense that they had success with and kind of scrap what they were doing here. I've heard Paul DePodesta. Do you think Paul DePodesta shares any of the blame? There's people they don't like the Moneyball guy. What's up with that?
I guess I don't know. Somebody must have started a campaign against Paul DePodesta because it made up what they think Paul DePodesta is responsible for, because I'm hearing Paul DePodesta be blamed for things that I'm really sure that he has nothing to do with, right? I've heard him be kind of blamed for the Watson trade, and I'm I remember there were 3 people on that jet. I don't believe that Paul DePodesta was one of those people on that jet trying to convince Deshaun Watson to come play for the Cleveland Browns. I might be wrong on that one. Yeah, he's really long-term planning. I don't think he's really involved in the day-to-day operations of the Cleveland Browns, so benching Deshaun Watson would not been in his purview. He's kind of just a guy who helps Jimmy put the long-term pieces in place, and then when he does that, I don't know what he does. Maybe he leads analytical research. Either way, I don't think Paul DePodesta, you could fire him. I don't think we would really be able to perceive what the change would or would not be, because for the most part, now that Kevin and AB are here, his job's pretty much done.
Yeah, and people have this perception about analytics. Analytics gives Jimmy Haslam okay, I'm spending $25 billion, and these are the numbers that say I can do that and get a return on those $25 billion.
Analytics are why you can keep re-signing all your young players too, right? That have been up for contracts. If people are wondering, how do the Browns keep keeping all their young players? Well, this is because they have an aggressive strategy with the salary cap that probably DePodesta has something. That would seem like something in his purview, right? Long-term cap management, stuff like that. Because that's kind of what he did for the Oakland A's back in the day, now the Las Vegas A's, I believe. So, which sounds weird. But nonetheless, I don't want to go off on a tangent here, but yeah, it's just people are using the word analytics like it's this boogeyman, but anything is analytics, man. Like a completion percentage is analytics. First down percentage is analytics. Like it's just information. What you do with it and the decisions you make with it are your own. But like analytics is a concept. It's like getting mad at data.
Yeah. Well, right now you can be mad at the record. The record's data, and I think everybody's pretty pissed off about that.
Every team in the NFL uses analytics, the good ones and the bad ones. It doesn't guarantee success, and it's not necessarily a strategy. It's just more information.
All right, so I know you've addressed this on your show as well. Best case scenario for the Browns as they move forward.
Yeah, you want to win, right? Because I think a lot of people are like, oh, we should lose, get the worst draft pick possible. One, this draft's not a draft class where you want to get the best pick in it, because it's kind of one of those years where you get the #1 overall pick and you're kind of setting somebody up for failure, because there's nobody in this draft class who's going to live up to the pressure of being a #1 overall pick. So that, to me, I would want to avoid being the worst team in the NFL this year. I think winning is how you breed more winning, right? You look at the teams who had success. You look at the teams that are perennial, not Pro Bowl, but perennial playoff contenders, Dave, and tell me if these teams got there by losing intentionally, right? Like the Buffalo Bills, did they lose intentionally, or did they just kind of take their picks where they got them, got a guy that they like, brought him into a system, they were winning some football before then, and then they developed them properly. Pat Mahomes is a prime example of this. The Kansas City Chiefs, they've been a dynasty. They're going on their 3rd championship run this year. They're undefeated, and they did not get Pat Mahomes by trying to lose and tank to get Pat Mahomes. Honestly, like, this is why I just don't get the whole tanking ideal as a good strategy. When has it ever worked? For as often as we cite tanking as like this foolproof strategy that you must do whenever your team is not on a winning track, Dave, can you tell me any dynasty that was born from tanking in sports, period?
No. Look at the Steelers, who are playing well. They haven't had a losing season since Mike Tomlin's been their head coach.
Look at Baltimore. Did they get where they're at by tanking?
No.
Did they tank to get Lamar Jackson, or did they just draft them with the resources that they naturally had by trying to win as many games as possible? So that's what the Browns need to do. They need to win as many games as possible. They're going to do that by running the ball, playing good defense. I think this team's primed, to be honest with you, Dave, to play a lot better football down the stretch, because this defense has played good football the last 2 weeks for 4 quarters, I think. And the offense, I think, will be better with some of the changes that they're making, mainly at the quarterback position, because I think they're going to be at least a lot less timid offensively.
Quincy Carrier and I are going to step aside, take another timeout. Other side of the break, back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Sports4CLE will be right back.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Quincy Carrier from Untitled Unfiltered Browns coverage. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hey, guys. I was just thinking about as far as the offensive line, and I think a lot of the guys got complacent due to lack of competition. I think if we would have used one of our draft picks on an offensive tackle, it might have put a little bit of more motivation into guys like DeJuan Jones, Jedrick Wills, and maybe Jack Conklin to maybe take their rehabbing, or as far as DeJuan Jones, staying in shape a little bit better, knowing that they had somebody fresh coming in behind them that is going to push them. I think the lack of competition has led to a lot of the problems we have on the offensive line. Just my thoughts. Hopefully we can get a win this Sunday. Go Browns.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Quincy, I don't know. I think they're injured. My question is, how did they not, being the organization, how did the Browns not realize that these guys, all 3 of them, were behind where they thought they would be rehab-wise? That's the bigger question. It was like they were surprised that it took so long for him to get healthy.
That's something that can kind of happen because you're the limited amount of communication you can have throughout the off season on those kind of things. So I can get how they can miss those timelines. I just didn't agree from it from a pure strategic standpoint. You got a guy at the end of his rookie deal in Jed Wills. You have Jack Conklin who's aging. It made sense to me to grab a tackle in this year's draft when there were so many to get them here. I know the caller brought up a point about competition, and that might be a factor in all of this as well. But I think that competition is a byproduct of when you just have a lot of talent in a room, right? And if you don't have any talent in that room, you're not going to have a ton of competition. And I think the problem is that they didn't really try to refill this room with talent in the ways that they have aggressively tried to refill other rooms with talent in years past. So I think just strategically, maybe they thought they had an extra couple of years on this offensive line, and maybe that was an optimistic guess that was misguided.
Oh, yeah, it's past its expiration date without question. Most disappointing player on each AFC team so far. This from Yard Barker. Browns, they go Jerry Jeudy. Has only 21 catches, 266 yards, 1 touchdown. Cleveland traded Amari Cooper to the Bills last week, pushing Jeudy into the number 1 spot. Finished Week 7's loss to the Bengals, just 1 catch, 5 targets for 18 yards. They didn't throw the ball today. I mean, I was surprised they didn't throw the ball to him until like the 4th quarter.
I don't think you could put together a most disappointing players list on each AFC team and talk about the Cleveland Browns and ignore the giant elephant in the room, right? I understand he tore his Achilles and you don't want to appear to beat somebody by their down, but if you're being objective about that list, we all know whose name should be on that list, who the most disappointing player in performance was for this team, and that's Deshaun Watson, right? Like nobody expected him to be under 200 yards every single game that he started so far this season in command an offense that's only capable of scoring less than 14 points a game. I mean, this is the most disappointing season from a player in the NFL, let alone on the Browns.
All right, NFL trade deadline, whether all 32 teams should be buyers, sellers, or stand pat from The Athletic. Browns, they say they should be sellers. What a shock. Browns are looking at a multi-year rebuild given Deshaun Watson's fully guaranteed contract. They'll need to make decisions based on salary cap implications, not only of what they ultimately do with Watson, but other players in whom they're heavily invested. Not as easy as trading Myles Garrett to the highest bidder, but the Browns absolutely should look at trading Zadarius Smith and Dalvin Tomlinson. Yeah, it's probably true. I get that. I don't know, though. I mean, you're hearing a 3rd or a 4th round pick for Smith, and didn't he sign a 2-year deal as well?
I think he's on a 1-year deal with a void year on it. Yeah, but yeah, I mean, like with Smith, I would see what you can get out there. I think there is a calculation that you need to make here because you're playing Myles Garrett and you don't want Myles Garrett to be frustrated, right? We can't just look at this as just the numbers on the table here where it's like, oh, you get this pick for this guy who's going to leave. There's also the consideration of, hey, how's that going to affect Myles Garrett? Is that going to piss him or make him angry? Is that going to put him in a bad situation? Or is that going to put him in a situation where his injuries can get worse because you're asking him to do more? That's part of the calculation you make as well as getting that 3rd round pick. With Dalvin Tomlinson, it's the same thing because the thing about trading Dalvin Tomlinson is you have literally nobody on this roster who plays the same position as Dalvin Tomlinson. So if you trade him, what are you doing to replace that functionally for your defense? And if you take those pieces away, what you can get is maybe you will get a 3rd round pick. Maybe you will get a 4th round pick. But maybe JOK gets injured because he's in a line of fire that he probably shouldn't be because there's not competent defensive tackle or edge play. That's a thing that I don't think enough people consider when they think about trading off all of these guys. And I think it's something that the Browns really need to consider is like, okay, there's trying to get the most out of what you can sell off, but what is going to be the consequence on the field of that? And are we going to put some key players that we want to be here for a long time and healthy for a long time with this team in a line of fire that they really shouldn't be? And is that going to cause them to get injured?
All right, I know you've addressed this as well. Who do you think could be the next Browns traded? Who are in that group of players that, they could move on from?
Yeah, I don't think the players in a position group that they don't really have a ton to spare are going to be the first ones moved. I think it's going to be somebody like Greg Newsome, right? Because you look at Greg Newsome, you look at the Browns secondary room, and you're like, okay, if you trade Greg Newsome, you're not putting a defense in a position where you're starting somebody who's incompetent. You're just going to start Cameron Mitchell, who you feel like is pretty competent there at the corner position. So that's kind of how I view it. I think Greg Newsome's probably going to be the first one to go.
Yeah, the other one would be if again, he's played so poorly, it's going to be hard. They're probably trying to find anybody that would give them something for Jed Wills at this point.
Yeah, you're not going to. He's on the 5th-year option. That money's guaranteed. It's hard to trade to begin with. Think about this. Baker Mayfield, who people thought had a chance to be a quarterback when the Browns traded him in 2022, could only fetch like a 6th-round pick because of his guarantees that he had as a 5th-round option with his 5th-round option. And that's kind of the similar situation that you're in with Jed Wills. Nobody's going to want to make a move for him. Just going to have to let that one expire, especially that you restructured the whole deal and everything like that in the offseason.
Quincy Carrier and I are going to step aside, take one more time out. We continue talking Brown sports for CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program is dedicated to recognizing exceptional students, teachers, and schools throughout Ohio. Scan the QR code on screen to nominate students and teachers as Academic All-Stars and Teachers of the Month. They must be currently enrolled or teach in grades K through 12. Is your K through 12 school developing students' literacy skills to achieve success in reading? If so, you can nominate your school for the School of the Year. Students can win $100, teachers can win $500, and schools can win $2,500. Scan the QR code, fill out the forms, and nominate deserving students, teachers, and schools today. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program takes pride in honoring exceptional students, teachers, and schools across Ohio. Submit your nomination today. It's fun, fast, and free. We continue talking Browns with Quincy Carrier from Untitled Unfiltered Browns coverage. This from the 33rd team. Havoc play leaders after 7 weeks. So it's defined as a play with a sack, tackle for loss, forced fumble, interception, or pass breakup. Lante Taylor from the Saints is 1 with 16 of those plays. Crosby and Branch, 15. Anderson and Watt, 14. Brian Burns from the Giants, 13. Tied for 7th, you got Zach Allen, Jalen Jones, Nick Bolton, Jeremiah Koromoa, and Denzel Ward. So 2 of the Browns tied for 7th, 12 apiece. It shows you how banged up Myles Garrett is. Normally he's in that top leaderboard.
Yeah, and like teams also avoided Myles Garrett there. But yeah, Myles hasn't had the type of season that you would want Myles to have. I would say this feels like a pretty off season for him. But JOK and Denzel Ward have picked up the slack sufficiently. I mean, playing really good football down the stretch. Denzel Ward, I think, coming off his best game, one of his best games in his career. And JOK has consistently been ranking above at the top of the linebacker rooms when it comes to PFF grades and some of these key metrics that you look for at the linebacker position.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think Ward's season is getting overlooked because the team is struggling so bad. I mean, it's noticeable when he's not out there. It really is noticeable. Teams are attacking, Newsome and Emerson when Ward's been banged up.
Yeah, and I think Ward has done an excellent job, not just like being out there, but being safe when he's tackling like those tight ends, right? Because he had one of those situations where he had to tackle a bigger player. Usually Ward's pretty reckless with it, but he came in pretty controlled in a situation like that. And I just think down the field, up the field, across the field, he's just been really good there for this team, kind of somebody who could just end a problem that you're having. I think of the Malik Neighbors game, right, where he was just killing every single DB that we had. Then we put Denzel Ward on and the problem went away.
All right, so coming up Sunday, Derrick Henry, who's having a good season. Lamar Jackson coming off a 5-touchdown pass game against the Browns. Jim Schwartz, Browns defensive coordinator, what he has seen Derrick Henry mean to the Ravens offense.
He certainly gives those guys a different dimension in the run game, and I would say it's because of all the big plays. It's not the 3, 4, 5 yarders, it's the 80 yarders and, some of those things that we've seen on film. Derrick Henry's a player we know. We went against him last year, and we're going to have to play our very best to slow down and contain their running game.
Yeah, the way the Browns are playing against the run, this one concerns me without question. You got Lamar and Derrick Henry.
Yeah, the Browns have done well, I think, recently, at least since 2020, against Lamar and against and Derrick Henry, both the times that they've played them. So I think there is a chance they can come in, play well, because they're so fast and athletic. They can get downhill before Derrick Henry can. But Jim Schwartz kind of hit it on the head. There's a lot of these games where Derrick Henry has like 32 yards and 12 carries, and you're doing a pretty good job shutting him down, and he breaks off a 50-yarder. Not even because he's doing anything special, just because that offensive line is really moving people for Baltimore. I think that's the focus. I know it's easy to talk about Derrick Henry. It's easy to talk about Lamar Jackson. Both those guys are spectacular individual players, but really you got to look at the performance of the Baltimore offensive line, which started off weak, but they're certainly coming on strong right now.
All right, so this from PFF. Key insights for each matchup. For the Browns, this is it. Baltimore's backfield, the most dangerous in the league. Henry, 91.8 overall grade for PFF, ranks first among running backs. Justice Hill's 91.4 receiving grade also comes in at number 1. Despite significant time missed, Nick Chubb's 4,900 yards after contact for his career ranks second to only Derrick Henry since 2018. During that time frame, Henry leads with missed tackles forced on rushing attempts, 361. Chubb ranks third with 316 forced on run plays. Again, Lamar Jackson has played better from the pocket. That's the thing that has been shocking to me. I don't know how you feel about it. When I watched him, I'm like, okay, there's development there.
I've been making this argument for Lamar Jackson since he was in his last year in the Greg Roman offense. He was getting held back as a passer by some of the training wheels that Baltimore insisted that he have on there. And since he's gotten into this Todd Monken offense, he's been a legitimate threat as a passer, as filthy as a threat as a passer as he is as a runner. He's an excellent player. He's going to win his third MVP if he continues to play this well. I mean, we just got to start talking about Lamar for what he is. He's not developing anymore. He's not what he could be. He's reached his full potential. He's going to be a Hall of Fame level player if he gets that third MVP, and especially if he gets any kind of postseason success. You're just going up against one of those guys, just one of those Hall of Fame level quarterbacks.
Yeah, and again, with his ability to throw the ball, now it's okay. Do you come after him and try to pressure him? Well, he's probably the most athletic guy on the field. I mean, it's a real dilemma for a defensive coordinator like Jim Schwartz.
Yeah, fortunately for the Browns, they have so much experience. This unit, this specific group of players going up against Lamar Jackson, that they're more capable of being able to slow him down, right? His division numbers aren't the same as like his out of conference and his in conference numbers, non-division. So I think the Browns have some pieces in place that can help him. JOK has always been somebody who has helped you against Lamar Jackson. It's just about being able to match their versatility with your versatility defensively, which a lot of teams don't have.
Quincy Carrier, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Quincy.
Thank you for having me.
Quincy Carrier, make sure you check him out. Always really good Browns coverage, untitled, unfiltered. Check out his show, really good stuff as well. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. We continue talking Browns. Dalton Wasserman from PFF, straight ahead on Sports4CLE. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
You know what I think? I don't think you have the stones.
Oh, I've got the stones. I think you're the one that don't have the stones.
Let's settle this once and for all.
Amble up to the 4 new Ohio Lottery scratch-offs with all kinds of stones. Gemstones, diamond, emerald, sapphire, and ruby tins. $10 each. 10 times multipliers. 2 fast spots for quick draw wins of up to $100 and a $500,000 grand prize. Which one will you get when you order them up? Well, that's just the luck of the draw.
I am powerful beyond my wildest imagination.
I will define my future.
I will keep challenging myself to improve.
Because I am a future leader of this great nation.
I will be responsible for raising a beautiful family.
And educating not only my generation, but many more to come.
I will make a difference in my community.
And I will stand up for what I believe in.
I will not settle for simply chasing my dreams. I will achieve them.
Because I was given a chance.
An opportunity.
A home.
At Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America.
The ultimate leadership experience.
FCCLA has been one of the greatest experiences of my life.
It's made me who I am today.
Join us. We'll build a new future together.
We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hi, this is Rico. I've been going back and forth with some fans about tanking for a better draft position or winning games. In my opinion, I believe you should always try and win. If I was Stefanski, I would want to win as many games as humanly possible. I mean, ultimately, we as fans can't control the outcome of a game, so if they win or lose, that's up to the team. But my thing is, we've been a losing organization. What has that brought us in regards to this great team full of Hall of Fame players? But that has done nothing for this team in decades. Also, do you trust Andrew Berry to draft a player? And do you trust Stefanski to develop them? Because I don't know if I do anymore. What say you? Thanks.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Let's welcome in Dalton Wasserman, PFF data analyst, also co-host of the PFF College Football Show. Dalton, I am never in favor of tanking or however you do that. I think Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry have done well enough that you give them the benefit of a doubt for one down season. I keep coming back to it was a scheme mismatch with Deshaun Watson, and it was and I was all for rebuilding the offense around him. Boy, was that a disaster. I couldn't have been more wrong.
Yeah, I think what you're getting right now is it is, for as much as the quarterback and Deshaun Watson's in the spotlight, it is a team-wide offensive problem, right? You've got very much an aging and injured offensive line. They have yet to find – they had Amari Cooper, but they've yet to build any depth at wide receiver. Nick Chubb is getting older and coming off a major injury, and we're seeing he's going to try to get back into rhythm here. But it feels like now they have to make a decision on what the timeline is to start winning again, right? Because it's not going to be this year, and they're not going to tank. They're going to go out there. They're going to try to win games. You got a very veteran team that wants to go out there and win games, but I do wonder, as opposed to just full tilt tanking, how many of these veteran guys get traded, right? When you talk about this talk, especially about Zadarius Smith lately, we've already seen Amari Cooper go. I think that's the biggest question is it's kind of that baseball trade deadline seller thing, right? Where it's like, okay, let's start getting the draft assets. Let's start rebuilding the farm, and we got to start playing for next year. It's not a tank by any means, but it is certainly a redirect towards the future.
Yeah, do you expect it to be is it a full rebuild, or do you think they try to tweak it? And the offensive line is one, it got old in a hurry.
Yeah, it sure did. I mean, this is the problem is they need younger players at a lot of spots on their team. And I think the first question, the offensive line, yes, but then you start talking about this quarterback situation, and obviously Watson's contract is fully guaranteed, but now you're talking about it's late October and he just tore his Achilles. he may not play at all next year, maybe a little bit late in the year, but he's looking at a long recovery process. So it's hard to say you can even really build it around him. So what do? Do you take a quarterback this year in this year's draft? Do you build the rest of it? Do you take an offensive lineman? Do you start getting younger on defense as well? Maybe do you take the top receiver? It's going to be interesting to see what direction they go in, because now, with their quarterback situation the way it is, it's hard to envision them winning next year anyway, right? Even though you still have a pretty good defense, but this offense is really, they have to figure out a clear-cut direction of where this is going for the future, because right now it's incredibly murky.
All right, Ravens coming in who have played really well. Browns defensive coordinator Jim Schwartz talked about Lamar Jackson and the challenges he presents.
I mean, it's been pretty much over his career. He's gone from a run-first quarterback to a pass-first quarterback that can make plays with his feet. Has a lot more quick throws in there. There's been times in the past that he sort of zeroed in on one receiver. When you got good players, you want to zero in on one guy. But now he's spreading the ball around to a lot more people. Has that combination of getting it out quick, but he can also make a play when the play breaks down. And he threatens all 53 in the third, 110 or 120 yards of the field. He's sideline to sideline, and he can go north-south in a hurry also. So, they pretty much opened the whole passing game up to him. And he can rely on that, but he also has those legs that he can make explosive plays. I mean, I think he leads the NFL in explosive runs.
So, Dalton, what have you seen? I know you watch a bunch of stuff. What have you seen from Lamar Jackson?
We have seen the best version of him yet, and this is a guy who's already won 2 MVPs. I think Coach Schwartz put it just right. This is the best he's ever looked as a passer. He's leading the NFL in passing grade for us. Seen him throw 15 passing touchdowns, only 2 interceptions, 9 big-time throws for us to only 2 turnover-worthy plays. This version of Lamar Jackson is the hardest player to defend in football because, again, like Coach said, we know what he can do in the run game, and especially with Derrick Henry behind him, and that you have that double threat back there in the run game. And then you have a guy he's locked in as a passer. They've got 3 good tight ends. Zay Flowers has really emerged over the last few weeks as a number 1 type of receiver. The way he's playing right now, again, he's the single toughest individual in the NFL to defend. If he's going to continue to throw the ball like he's been throwing it lately, he's on his way to a 3rd MVP.
All right, so everybody knows Browns' season has kind of gone south pretty quickly. And really, Denzel Ward is playing really well, and it's getting overshadowed. This is his numbers in single coverage. PFF tweets this out. 10 forced incompletions, first in the NFL. No touchdowns allowed. 90.3 PFF grade, second in the NFL. And the other thing that I said last segment, I think it was, when he goes out of the game, it's noticeable. They go after Greg Newsome or Martin Emerson, and offenses have been beating the Browns, passing the ball when Ward isn't in there.
Yeah, that's true, Dave. I mean, Ward is really the one guy that's stepped up in coverage. You mentioned Newsome and Emerson have struggled on the outside. Newsome, I think, usually better as a slot guy when he has to get out there and he gets in those one-on-one situations and stuff. But no, Ward has been really good, and he's been really good in a defense that I think is maximizing his skill set, right? You talk about Jim Schwartz uses single high defenses and man coverage as much as any coach in the NFL right now, and Ward's a big reason that he does that, right? He's two things that you notice: he's incredibly fast, and he's very competitive, right? He's competitive to the football. He's got, I think it's 11 forced incompletions this year. I mean, just a guy who gets to the ball. Sometimes he'll gamble a bit and make a mistake here and there, and he's still not the best tackler. But to have a guy with the ability to play man-to-man at the level Ward does, you're right. You can tell when he's not on the field, but you can certainly tell when he's on the field too, and it's a lot different when you have that guy you can put on a number 1 receiver.
All right, PFF storylines. This for the Browns and Ravens game. Cleveland turns to Jameis Winston. So, again, Browns are transitional. This was forced on them by the Achilles tear to Deshaun Watson last game. What do you expect to see from Jameis Winston?
You expect, well, it's kind of funny because you expect to see Jameis Winston, and it's often a roller coaster with him, right? Where you can see some absolutely fantastic throws, and then you might see some dicey ones into some tight windows. So, I do think if he can bring an element of just better downfield passing, because that was really the problem when Watson was in there. They just couldn't work past that 10 to 12 yard range, right? So I do wonder if Jameis could try to get a little bit more vertical, even with the risk that comes with. But honestly, when you're already 1-6, you might as well take those chances anyway. So Jameis, if nothing else, he's always been fun to watch, even if it can be pretty high and low.
Dalton Wasserman, PFF data analyst, co-host of the College Football Show on PFF, and I'm going to step aside, take a quick time out, talk a little bit more about the Browns-Ravens, also a little bit about this upcoming weekend in college football. Sports for CLE. I'll be right back. Stay with us.
You know what I think? I don't think you have the stones.
Oh, I've got the stones. I think you're the one that don't have the stones.
Let's settle this once and for all.
Amble up to the 4 new Ohio Lottery scratch-offs with all kinds of stones. Gemstones, diamond, emerald, sapphire, and ruby 10s, $10 each. 10 times multipliers, 2 fast spots for quick draw wins of up to $100 and a $500,000 grand prize. Which one will you get when you order them up? Well, that's just the luck of the draw.
We continue talking football with Dalton Wasserman, PFF data analyst, co-host of the PFF College Football Show. Take a look at this. Derrick Henry, we've talked about how good he has been. Rushes first, rush yards first, rushing touchdowns first, yards per rush first, rush first downs first, longest rush first, scrimmage yards first, scrimmage touchdowns first. Every single category running the football, Derrick Henry, who is coming into Cleveland to face a Browns defense that hasn't been good against the run, he ranks first in the NFL. What have you seen from Derrick Henry when you've looked at him this year, Dalton?
You've seen everything that makes Derrick Henry a Hall of Famer, the size, the speed, even, I think he's always had underrated vision for a back that's big and that's that big. And you've got a guy, he's just one of the hardest. He might be the hardest guy in football to tackle, right? You talk about he's forced 25 missed tackles this year, which is actually only 4th, but he's just a monster. He's always been a monster, and it seems even now at 30 years old, it's just not slowing down. And in an offense, too, when you have Lamar Jackson alongside of him, when they run those option plays or when you're in the shotgun, and as well as Lamar has been throwing the ball, it's just there's so much space for him to work with right now. In the last couple of years in Tennessee, everybody knew, look, you load the box, they're probably not going to throw it over your head, but it all goes together. When we talked about before with Lamar and how well he's throwing the ball, it's all complementary, and Henry's taking advantage of every bit of space that's given to him. And I think it helps, too, that he's got a guy like Justice Hill who can come in on 3rd down and take some of the passing downs, but Henry's a monster. You're just seeing why he's going to make the Hall of Fame one day. He's got all the tools in the box.
He might go over 2,000 yards again. He's done it once, and if he stays healthy, I can't believe he won't go over 2,000 yards again this year.
Yeah, no, for sure. He could break Eric Dickerson's rushing record the way he's running right now. I mean, it's the explosive runs, too. It's the fact that he still has the speed to him, that he can pop off an 80-yard run at any time. He's amazing. I mean, he's really one of the best, if not the best, of this generation that we've seen. It's just incredible what he continues to do. And this was the nightmare for every other opposing team, right? When you talk about, he's joining this Ravens team and Lamar Jackson, and they're in the same backfield. And we've seen every bit of that so far. Right now there's not a great answer to stopping it other than just, buckle up and see how hard you can hit him before he starts to slow down.
All right, PFF matchup to watch. Ravens, Browns. It's Derrick Henry against linebacker Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. Past week, Henry racked up an 11.3 yards per carry on his way to over 180 all-purpose yards touchdown. 3rd game this season, having earned an 80-plus offensive grade. Taking down a bruising back is team effort, but surely JOK will take the lead in that. Currently holds 92.4 PFF run grade defensively, 2nd highest among linebackers. So that's the good news. You got a linebacker who's good against the run, but boy, he's going to need to show up big time against Henry.
Yeah, he is, and the one big thing, what's supporting that grade is he's such a good athlete, and his quickness is so good, and he's been able to shed blocks all year, and that's going to be the first key against the Ravens' offensive line that has some new starters on it, right? 3 new starters they came into the year with, and they've been a little bit inconsistent, right? So I think Owusu-Koramoah, his biggest strength right now is shedding blocks and getting to the football. The biggest key to this matchup against Henry, though, is tackling. There's only 3 players in all of football who have missed more tackles than Owusu-Koramoah. So he's certainly getting to the ball, but what you're seeing is times where he's getting there and he's not quite finishing the play. When you're going up against Derrick Henry, you better finish the play, or we already know he can take it a long way on you. It is a very interesting matchup to watch, because I think he is the biggest problem, outside of Myles Garrett, of course, I should say, but he's the biggest problem right now in run defense when it comes to where he is. He lines up in all sorts of different spots. He's a great athlete. He can really run. He can shed blocks, but he's got to finish plays and make tackles in this game against Henry to really slow down the Ravens offense.
All right, let's turn our attention to college football. Again, you are a co-host of the PFF College Football Show. Oregon, #1. Also seen all kinds of changes in the rankings, and there's some unbeatens. Penn State, Miami, Iowa State, Brigham Young, and Indiana, all undefeated. What have you thought about Oregon, and who of those next level unbeatens do you think could make some noise?
I mean, it's certainly the other 2 teams in the Big Ten with them stick out when you talk about Penn State and Indiana. I know Indiana's been arguably the biggest surprise in the nation this year. And you talk about a weird dynamic where none of those 3 teams play each other in the regular season. So now Penn State and Indiana still have both huge games against Ohio State coming down the pipe. So really, Ohio State is the other big factor in that. They could get themselves to a Big Ten title game in a rematch with Oregon. Oregon looks like they have the easiest schedule of the bunch the rest of the way. But you talk about the race at the top of the Big Ten is incredibly competitive. And then those 2 Big 12 teams that you mentioned too, BYU and Iowa State, this Big 12 race is going to be a lot of fun. I think the conference is getting underrated. I know all the spotlight's always on the SEC and the Big 10, but the top of the Big 12 is a lot of fun to watch right now. And they got some really good teams nipping at their heels too.
What about the SEC? You know, Georgia gets the big win, so they're #2. Texas falls down a little. Alabama's kind of all over the place. What do you make of the SEC?
It's funny because especially with Georgia's win over Texas, I think it's become the most unpredictable conference, right? I could look at the other 3 and go, well, in the Big Ten, there's really four teams fighting for it. The ACC and the Big 12 down to about 6, but you know, there's not really a clear hierarchy right now. It seems like every week the SEC gets turned upside down. And I think that there's no more evidence of that than the fact that the biggest game this week for first place is between LSU and Texas A&M, which is, I don't think at this point what we thought we'd be saying this season. And Texas has a huge game at Vanderbilt that they need to win. Alabama-Missouri game, you just mentioned Missouri's very banged up. That's a win Alabama needs. The SEC right now is actually the hardest to project because there's so much talent and there's so many teams that have suffered a loss maybe that they feel like they shouldn't have already. So it's very hard to project. I will say the win for Georgia over Texas was incredibly impressive. They should feel very good about themselves, but there's still some tough games left to go there. It's very, very foggy right now, and it's going to take the results of a couple of more weeks to really clear it up.
Which games are you paying especially close attention to this week, and who do you like in them?
I think there's a couple. The LSU Texas A&M game is very interesting, and I'm also going to give you one in the group of 5. Friday night, Boise State and UNLV. This is massive as far as playoff implications go. These are 2 really good football teams. It looks like the group of 5 playoff spot, if there's only one, because there's some possibilities you could see more than one. You're talking about 2 of the best teams in the group of 5. Either the winner of the Mountain West or I think the winner of the American is going to wind up with that spot. And Boise's already ranked number 17. Ashton Jeanty might be the Heisman favorite right now with what he's doing at running back. And then the other one I'm going to point out too, actually Saturday at noon, Notre Dame and Navy. I'm going to tell you right now, Navy is a real threat to Notre Dame. That's a really good football team with a more diverse offense than people think. It's not the same old triple option. They still run it, but it's not the same thing they've always run. Notre Dame's got a real problem on their hands in this game. I think it's going to be tight.
You mentioned the group of 5. Liberty lost to Kennesaw State, who hadn't won a game. I think it was Kennesaw State's first FCS win.
Yeah, it was. And Liberty now with that loss, that pretty much that one loss puts them out of playoff contention. It was going to be hard for them even if they went undefeated, because honestly, Conference USA, I would argue, is the weakest conference in the country. And the fact that they have a loss and the fact that they have that loss on their resume, I think Liberty's just about done unless they get a ton of help when it comes to playoff contention, because it's a very weak schedule. And now this year they had the big slip up that's going to put them out of it.
Who, a lot of Ohio State fans check this out. Who is the biggest challenge that Ohio State is going to have to take care of moving forward to try to get that rematch with Oregon?
It's Penn State in their game next week, I think. And I know Indiana is also going to be a very tough game depending on how quickly Curtis Rourke gets healthy. We'll see if Indiana can continue, especially on defense. But I have to default to Penn State right now. Penn State's so physical on defense. Their pass rush is incredible. And their offense has been a lot better under their new offensive coordinator, Andy Kotelnicki. Penn State, this week, they have a big game at Wisconsin that they have to get through first. Wisconsin's pretty good still, and it's on the road. But Penn State, this game next week at Happy Valley is going to be incredibly dangerous for a team. If they let Penn State get balanced in their offense and get into their play action game, Ohio State could have a real problem in that game.
Dalton Wasserman, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Dalton.
Appreciate it, Dave. Always fun to be on.
Dalton Wasserman, PFF data analyst. Make sure you check him out. Also co-hosts the PFF College Football Show. It's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We will see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.